shutting it off, I guess.
Mics are on.
Mics are on.
Mics are on. Testing, testing.
Wish we could get mics that you have to push the top rather than.
That would keep you up in your seat.
Yeah, everybody. These need
First of all, it would
these
make you
are-
get closer.
actually, we've been talking, these are due for an upgrade anyhow. The sound system and stuff is due for an upgrade just because the technology changes, so.
Good evening, everyone. The hour being 7 p.m. on Monday, November 28th, 2022. I'd like to call to order the City of Laconia City Council meeting. Before we go any further, though, I'd ask Councilor Haynes, Mark Haynes, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Councilor Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We're joined at council table this evening by our city clerk, Katie Gargano, and I'd ask her to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Here?
Counselor Susie,
Here.
Counselor Littman,
Here.
Counselor Haynes,
Here.
Counselor Felch,
Here.
Mayor Hosmer.
Here. We're also joined at council table this evening by our city manager, Kirk Biotti, as well as city finance director, Glenn Smith. On our agenda, item number 7A, which is approval of the regular city council meeting minutes of November 14th, 2022. Minutes of the regular city council meeting of that November 14th, 2022 were not yet available when this agenda was finalized, but the minutes were distributed to the city council on November 26th, 2022. With no corrections or changes submitted to the clerk, the minutes will be accepted as distributed. We have no consent and action items this evening. We're on to agenda item number 9 right now, which is citizen comments for matters not on the agenda. If anyone is here who would like to speak to a matter not on this evening's agenda, now would be the appropriate time. Welcome.
I'm Gretchen here with Taylor Community. I just wanted to give 3 quick updates or kind of shout outs to city folks. The first is kudos to Celebrate Laconia. I know it was a little rainy yesterday, but I know our assisted living residents still really enjoyed being most of a part of the parade. So really shout out to everyone that put that on and made that happen. I know they all said it was so amazing being out there, so thank you for making that happen. The second thing is I really wanted to just highlight and shout out the Hewitt program and David Warrender and his team and all the students there. With our close proximity to the school, we're able to do lots of neat partnerships with them with all the different trades. And a couple of the neat ones that I've been a part of recently, one is the first-year culinary students under Chef Mary Gibbs. They invited us over to do some Tuesday afternoon teas most Tuesdays in the afternoon to sort of test their skills and host residents. But also what's been really neat is she's also having them sit down with the residents and have some real neat conversations. So it's really been great for our residents, but likewise, I think it's offering them different opportunities, and we're gonna do some neat stuff. Long-term, we're gonna have them sort of the menu for our resident pub night up in Woodside and different things. So we're really grateful for that relationship. Another neat one that just happened recently is the LNA program that does a lot of their clinical stuff at Taylor. We're actually, thanks to Carol Brody, who's in charge of that program right now, she's really, again, focusing on communication with the kids. And so she had them meet with our French club on campus and some other residents to sort of have sort of a group discussion. And they're coming back, I think, I wrote down the date. December 9th to sort of present their communication projects, but then they're likewise going to do a lot more one-on-one interaction. So it's really great for our residents, but it's also works nicely to sort of expand the different things that the Hewitt can offer for their students. And just in closing, I'd just say the reason we believe so strongly in these partnerships is because a couple of our valued leadership team members are actually products of the Hewitt program. Both Seth McClelland and Stacy Hubble are really spearheading a lot of these partnerships because they obviously were a big part of the program and have seen where it took them. So we're grateful for that. And then the final thing I'd just say is, in addition to all the other great concerts we have coming up, we have a really special one coming up in the middle of December. I think it's on the 16th, and it's the Laconia Middle School Band is going to join us at 5 p.m. So anyone that wants to join us, please do.
Thank you, Gretchen. It's always great to see you and have you here, so thanks for keeping us posted.
Thanks.
Anyone else here this evening who would like to speak to matters not on the agenda? All right. Seeing none, we'll move along to item 13, which is public hearings. Under item 13A, it's a public hearing relating to a supplemental appropriation to accommodate acceptance of an exceptional needs grant by the Laconia School District. Notice of this public hearing was made available in the November 16th, 2022 edition of the Laconia Daily Sun, posted at Laconia City Hall, Laconia Community Center, Laconia Public Library, and the offices of SAU. Action on this item may be taken up under unfinished business later on during this meeting. I'd like to open the public hearing at 7:06 p.m. And if anyone is here who would like to speak to that matter, now would be the appropriate time.
We ask the school superintendent to speak to it?
Absolutely. Come right up if you'd like to just refresh our recollection. We spoke about it last week, but
Good evening. Thank you for having us here tonight, and thank you for putting this on the agenda. Last time we met with the City Council, we talked a little bit about the Extraordinary Needs Grants, which was a grant that was signed into law by Governor Sununu earlier this year. And the purpose of the grant is to support students in the time of COVID, post-COVID, as well as to support learning loss. And so we had 4 categories of items that we talked about in the last meeting, which were transportation, technology, instructional supplies and supports, and then professional development for staff. I'm happy to talk about anything in further detail if you'd like.
you take a question from Councilor Lippman.
Sure.
Superintendent Tucker, there's been a lot in the news about the issues of teenage mental health and the impact that the time away from school had. In terms of the professional development to staff, does any of that investment include dealing with that issue?
Not specific to this grant. So one thing we're looking at is bringing in some people through the Office of School Wellness and using grant funds to support that. We're looking at a speaker to come in and speak to the community as well as to staff about dealing with stress and anxiety. And we have other supports that we're using through that office, but not specific to this grant.
I guess if it isn't all finalized, I guess I'd encourage that, some of the training to recognize signs and symptoms and how to refer would be maybe a good use of some of the money too.
I would hope that the professional development that we're looking at supporting our staff with would consider that. And I believe that it does.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Superintendent.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Anyone else here would like to speak to this matter? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing at 7:08 p.m. Thanks.
Thank you.
Agenda item 13B, which is a public hearing on ordinance 2022-195-10 to amend City Code Chapter 195, Special Events and Outdoor Assembly Section 195-10, the fee schedule. Notice of this public hearing was made available in the November 16th, 2022 edition of the Laconia Daily Sun and posted at Laconia City Hall, Laconia Community Center, Laconia Public Library, and the offices of the SAU. I'd like to open the public hearing on this matter at 7:09 PM. And if anyone would like to speak to that, now would be the appropriate time. Good evening, Representative-elect St. Clair.
Good evening, Mayor Hosmer.
Nice tie.
Thank you, thank you very much. This is the Motorcycle Week.
Yes.
Okay. I would like to pass on, I mean, obviously, nobody likes to pay more money, including the city, on whatever it is. But I have spoken to a number of property owners, maybe 8, and they totally understand the situation. So I guess that's a positive statement. About as good as I can get.
That's good.
Okay. So thank you very much.
Charlie?
Do you have a question for, if you can stay for a question for Counselor Susie, that'd be great.
Mr. St. Clair, I know you recently went to Daytona probably, and you also went to North Dakota and all those.
South Dakota,
South
correct.
Dakota?
Yep.
How does this fee schedule we have here, if you know, compared to those?
I really don't know. I know that ours is definitely lower with regards to, we're not talking vendors here now, we're talking about property owners that do stuff. And they have a two-tiered system out there. They have the county to deal with, and then they have the city. If you're within the city limits, you'll deal with them. If you're outside the city limits, you'll have a county. Of course, we all know they have city taxes and county taxes on top of each other out there, too. So I think the city manager has done some research on that. He may be able to answer that easier for you. The other thing why I'm thinking about it is that with regards to Motorcycle Week, I know there one business in particular, which is Burrito Me, which is in downtown, and they do a burrito eating contest and some motorcycle events during the rally. And I don't know what they pay, but quite frankly, what they do there does not incur any additional cost. There's no trash pickup. There's no added work for that I'm aware of for city employees. They don't need the police down there. It's a real quick and simple event. So if there's to carve that out of any increases for during Motorcycle Week, I think that would be a good thing. So,
Thank you, sir.
okay, thank you all.
Charlie, is this the 100th anniversary coming up this year?
That is correct.
And how about rally sponsors? Are you still collecting rally sponsors?
We
from
are,
people?
and I'll be visiting the city manager on a more regular basis about some opportunities and things that we can do to try to make it advantageous for everybody. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, a presentation, I think, so everybody understands what it is to be a rally sponsor would be really helpful, and opportunities. I mean, it just kind of make the public continue to notify the public about what opportunities are there and why it's important.
I appreciate that, Mayor, and also even our rally patron thing. I'd love to get Jennifer in here sometime to make a presentation. I know you guys, these meetings go on and on and on, but I've seen one of her presentations before. She goes over a lot about what Motorcycle Week has done for the city, for the state. And it was really enlightening to me, even though I live this. But she had a lot of figures and facts that I think would be most helpful and a good thing for you guys to hear and see.
One more, sir. Being the 100th, as the mayor brought out, I think it's awesome. What have you seen, or can you give us some ideas of what you see maybe for, it's gonna be more excitement or more participation?
Is this on the agenda? Because I came up for the, maybe at a later time.
You're a public servant, so we're trying to.
I understand that. You know, we're I guess, restricted by the fact that, as you know, the city doesn't own a lot of property. Certainly, association doesn't have any property. So we're restricted to what property owners are willing to do on their property. So if you look at some big spaces around, we'll take the drive-in theater. That's a totally underused piece of property right now. We hope that something happens there. We are, in fact, working on that. as recently as this afternoon. So we're hoping there are some other events, but the reality is that the 100th anniversary will be exciting for people by just showing up and being here and be able to say, I was there for the 100th. And, you know, I'll ride with that as long as I can, but we'll certainly be looking for and adding other events that will be hopefully special for this year. And again, as always, with great cooperation from this very council and city departments, et cetera.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
He's looking at you.
I know.
So if anyone else is here to speak to this matter, now would be the appropriate time. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing at 7:15 PM. Moving on to agenda item number 14, which is a presentation by New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services on the Winnipesaukee River Basin Program's fee increase scheduled for fiscal year 2024. And I believe we have Dr. McMillan here to lead us through the presentation. Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity, hopefully to give you a brief presentation and then be able to answer any questions you may have. So let me, since this isn't my laptop, I'll just make sure I'm pushing the right buttons. There we go. Okay. The Winnipesaukee River Basin was actually created in 1972 as a regional sewer system to serve 10 communities in the Lakes region. It actually was funded primarily with federal funds at that time as part of the culmination of the Clean Water Act. And the Clean Water Act is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year, so it's very appropriate that we acknowledge the fact that this was really a collaboration between federal, state, and local activists, really, to be able to clean up the lakes and rivers in the Lakes region. Our service area, like I said, spans 10 communities, and I call it the giant Y. It goes all the way up to Guilford, Moultonborough, Center Harbor, comes through Laconia, and then the treatment plant is all the way down in New Hampshire. So the map that you're seeing is part of that. We have about 57 miles, I roughly call it 60 miles of regional sewers, and then each community has their own municipal sewer system or district sewer system. So Laconia has a lot more miles of sewer than the entire Winnipesaukee River Basin program because we only have the sewer lines connecting the member communities. We have 14 pump stations, a shop here at the our largest pump station over at Winnisquam, which is our Laconia maintenance shop, and then, like I said, the Franklin wastewater treatment plant. So, as I mentioned, the relationship between the Basin program and the member communities is we do not bill the end users. We bill the communities, all 10 of the communities, and I call us, as most state agencies, a nonprofit. In other words, we guess every year as to what we're going to bill communities based upon our budget, our spend rate, what our anticipated needs are, any inflation, extra costs that we forecast, and then the communities or billed that prospectively for the upcoming fiscal year, and then the second quarter of the subsequent year, we actually square up. In other words, we don't carry a balance. We actually either refund if we have overbilled, or we actually have to go back and dip into the till again and get more money if we have overspent. So this is sort of a busy graphic, but I wanted to show you that, again, the fiscal 23, which is what we're in now, and I believe Laconia is also on a fiscal year, and then we have actually submitted through the state budget system our bureau budget. We are a bureau within Department of Environmental Services. So all we have done right now is submit our budget as part of DES's budget to the governor. So big caveat here, big giant note is we don't have a final budget yet for fiscal 24-25. So this is our best estimate based upon what we have submitted to the governor for consideration. Then obviously it has to go to the legislature for approval and come back as part of the agency budget. So what I am giving you here is our best estimates of what we would be billing communities for this year, which we already have started billing, and the next 2 fiscal years based upon our projections. And as you'll see, there's quite a spike. And I'll get into that as to some of the reasons why we're seeing those increases. And this is not unique to our bureau or state agency or even municipalities. We're seeing unprecedented inflation. Our electricity rates just about doubled, okay? That affects us just like it does municipalities or homeowners or anyone else on the sewer system. We actually have different billing categories within our state operating budget. The largest is our operation and maintenance, O&M. Okay, this is utilities, personnel, keeping the doors open, chemicals, et cetera. So this is what it takes to keep us operating, to keep equipment replaced, repaired, maintained. Then we have administration. A lot of this is overhead costs. It's our IT department. It's our, some of the benefits costs for our retirees are in that. So that is actually a smaller increase, but it's still an increase from this fiscal year to the next biennial budget. And then we have debt service. For capital projects, we have been lucky enough since the inception of the program to get grants and loans. And a lot of times for example, we had, if you remember, the Obama ARA money, okay, to offset some of the capital debt service. We're actually lucky enough to get some of the new ARPA money. All these acronyms, they sound the same, but they actually are different. So our capital debt is actually the long-term debt service. So that's on a forecast schedule. We actually have 8 capital projects. If the advisory board has shared with you, we have a capital improvements plan that is a 10 and 20-year forecast. And over the next biennium, we expect some of those new projects to complete and loan debt service to start on some of those 8 capital projects that we're going to be doing. Okay, so why the increase? What we have done is, in addition to just the normal increases for inflation, personnel costs, et cetera, we have actually worked through prioritized needs, and some of this may already be shared with the council, but it boils down to 30 to 35% increase is electricity, fuel, biosolids, disposal, which is our solids that we have to dispose of, and chemicals. So 30 to 35% of our increase is just in those. Then we have certain forecast retrofits or replacements. The facilities are going up on 40 plus years, and staff has been great about trying to repair, keep things up to operating condition without having to do wholesale replacements. What we are forecasting now is a lot of those, we're actually going to start having to see replacements because it's no longer cost effective to actually keep fixing and fixing. For example, one of our big tanks, we call them clarifiers, it's been rebuilt 3 times. The first time it was 15 years before we had to rebuild it. Then it was 8 years. Last time it was 4. It's time to fix it. So we're doing that, and so we've had to forecast some of those prioritized needs, and that's about $1.3 million in each of those years. So these are things that we need to do, we're forecast to do, and can accomplish, can implement over the next 3-year period, starting this year up through the next biennium. Some of the consequences of not maintaining the system, and hopefully most of you understand the terminology SSO, which is sanitary sewer overflow. In other words, there's a backup, it hits the environment, and I'm the person that has to make the call to both DES and EPA and says, we've got now sewage into the environment. We also have debris, sanitary wipes, heck, 2x4s get into our system. Don't ask me how, but 2x4s, debris, et cetera, get into our system. The next slide shows some of the consequences of what we're having to deal with that actually can damage our equipment.
Dr. McMillan, do
Yes.
I dare ask what a 60-foot wipe worm removed from a sewer line is?
Are you familiar with the wipes? Everybody with COVID, you know, the sanitary wipes that say, oh, they're flushable? They're not flushable. I don't care who makes them. They aren't, okay? They actually are a cloth fiber, so that even though we send it through grinders, and the bottom right picture is the grinders we send them through, they're supposed to grind things up, but because they have fibrous in them as opposed to toilet paper, which is paper that dissolves, it actually reanneals, and it becomes a giant wipeworm. It also can become part of a fatberg. This was something in the news in London a few years ago, where it was something like a 4-ton debris and grease out of their sewer system. So this is the sort of thing that will clog and damage pumps, damage grinders to try to grind them up. And if we grind them, they just go farther down, and then they become a wipeworm. That wipeworm is actually folded in half. So if you look at it, it was like this, but we grabbed the center of it and pulled it out. It's very disgusting, but that's what it is. Debris and these wipes can also imbalance pumps. So the bottom left picture, I don't know if you can see the detail, but one of my staff members is actually holding a metal piece about like this that's supposed to be part of that circular impeller that's the inside of the pump. It literally shattered and broke off. So these things are not cheap. So one of the educational things that I'm hoping gets passed along is some of these things hopefully are preventable. Through education, we have things, don't put grease down, don't put these supposedly flushable wipes down, don't put diapers, don't put
Don't put
bed
2x4s
sheets.
down there.
Don't put 2x4s down. Yeah, I mean, you know, we do have construction debris and everything. You know, people don't want to take it to the dump. They open up a sewer manhole, we found cinder blocks. Luckily, they don't travel down the sewer system, but what happens is then this other debris accumulates on it like a dam. It backs up, comes to the surface, and you have a sewer overflow. So, inappropriate items down the sewer are one of our biggest headaches. On the flip side of that, the money that we have assessed and collected from member communities not only go into our operating costs and our administrative costs, you know, that would be sort of the in and out of what needs to be done, but they're also investments. So over the past 15 or so years, 12 to 15, we've completed our first energy efficiency project in fiscal year 10. And since that time, the money that we've invested, we've actually decreased our electric cost by 37% at the treatment plant. The way I look at that is that's avoided cost. If we hadn't done those investments, and by the way, we got grants, we got incentives from Eversource, so that the simple payback on these things, every one of them was less than 2 years. The last two we completed were less than a year for simple payback on the projects, just based upon outside funding. But if we hadn't done that, not only would our electric rates be double, you know, because of the rate increase, but we'd be paying that 37% on top of it. I already mentioned the capital improvement plan. We have 8 projects where we're securing clean water SRF loans through DES, utility incentives through Eversource, and we have secured about $2 million in offsets. So for the $13 million, we're only going to be paying about 11. So I always like to do this. You know, what is the value of this program to the end users, the sewer users? I like this math. 0.2 of a penny per gallon treated of wastewater. 0.2 of a penny per gallon. That's what everybody's paying right now. Yes, that's going up to about 0.3 of a penny per gallon treated next year, but still a heck of a deal. The other comparison I like to do, and I know I'm doing this presentation for Laconia, but I always get this question, well, what are other members paying? And Laconia is not the highest sewer rate. although they are the largest member of what we bill. For example, right now, we bill Laconia for about 49% of our O&M costs. You're the biggest user, have the most sewer users, so that's about what your proportional share is of the program. The good news is that over the next 2 years, based upon the hybrid rate study that we've just done for flow contribution for our O&M, Laconia is going from like 49% down to 43% in fiscal '25, because you're not contributing as much wastewater proportionally as the other members combined. So your actual percentage is going down. So that helps minimize Laconia's cost. Each member community sets their own sewer rates. Again, we don't bill the in-sewer user, we bill the communities. And so this graphic really just shows that we're a proportion or a portion of all the members' actual sewer budget. So in Laconia, currently we're about 55% of the proposed and current sewer budget. So the other 45% is to maintain Laconia's municipal sewers, doing all the same things we do, except at the treatment plant, but maintaining all the equipment, the pump stations, the collection system, et cetera. I also wanted to mention that even though these are, excuse me, the last survey in 2021 that DES did, the annual sewer rate across the state was $511 a year. Okay, Laconia's was about $499. It's a little bit less than 500, based upon that survey. Oops, what did I do? Did I go backwards?
Yep.
Okay, there we go. So the assessments to Laconia, based upon that 49 going to 43%. This fiscal year, it's about all in for the 3 billing categories: O&M, operation and maintenance, administration, and debt service, about $2.4 million. And again, that equates to about 55% of the sewer budget. Next year and the following year, it'll be right around $3 million, $3.2 million, $3.1 million. And the biggest increase is in the O&M for those prioritized needs. This next graphic.
Yeah, Dr. McMillan,
Hey, so-
a couple of those slides, your O&M actually goes down in the
Correct,
second year.
in fiscal '25. Yes, it actually goes down. And again, that's because, again, your percentage rate goes from.
That's what reflects it,
Right.
okay.
And the fact that one of the things that's in the state budget, if it's a biennial budget, 2-year budget, if you put the money in the first year and you don't use it all, it's easy to carry it forward to the next year and complete a project. So a lot of times it's skewed a little bit to the higher the first fiscal year than the second. But you're right, it's pretty much flat level budgeted once you get it to the 2 fiscal years, except Laconia is going down just a little bit because of the reduction in the O&M.
Thank you.
This graphic shows sort of the percent changes and where those changes are. As I mentioned, about 12%, and this is all compared to this year because, again, it's pretty flat for the fiscal '24-25. So about 12% equates to personnel costs, benefits, et cetera. The debt, again, in fiscal '24-25, we're actually having some new debt come in. Normally, it's decreasing debt, but we're having some new loans come due. And we don't have the loans come due until the project is completed. So I always forecast conservatively, let people know it could be completed in fiscal '25. I want everybody to be prepared. If it's fiscal '26, great, you're not billed for that until then, but at least you're prepared in case it does come due. Utilities, like I said, 27 to 30%, that's primarily utility, electric costs. Biosolids disposal, for those of you that aren't familiar, biosolids are the solids portion of the wastewater. We actually do beneficial biosolids, Class B biosolids, but because of the PFAS concerns, the local land spreading of those byproducts in New Hampshire is pretty much non-existent. So we're actually having to send our Class B biosolids to Merrimack Wastewater Treatment Plant, where they actually compost it into a marketable commodity, a Class A product. So we have transportation, and we have the tipping fee and the processing fee to do that so that we can actually dispose of those biosolids. Then we have facility maintenance, and then equipment repair and replacement. And those by far are the biggest one. That's where our prioritized needs are, because we recognize that the return on investment of just putting Band-Aids on that equipment forever and ever is costing us more money in emergency response, downtime, repairs, than replacing the equipment. So this slide goes back to how these cost increases actually affect a typical Laconia residential sewer rate. So I got some information from Mr. Anderson as to some of the proposed increases, but pretty much when you think about it, if a sewer bill is $60 a year, you know, that's $5 a month. At 55%, we account for $2.50 a month of that $60. And so this is just the comparison of, you know, I realize that every community is a little different, whether you bill quarterly, flat fee, annually, but it just gives you a comparison again. It goes back to that 0.2 and 0.3 of a penny per million gallon. It equates to the impact of going from, you know, $2.50, $2.65 a month to maybe as high as $4.45 a month or $4.25 a month. I always like to sort of close a little bit on this is what you're paying for is really an award-winning regional facility, okay? We try to keep our fiduciary responsibility in mind, but we also want to make sure that we're compliant, we're safe, and that's been recognized over the years. And especially in 2019, we were determined to be the most energy efficient wastewater treatment plant in New Hampshire. That only helps the future rates. So, $70 million, primarily federal money, to build the facilities. Since that time, I actually added it up. Since 1972, 73, about $99 million has gone into maintaining it. But what has been accomplished? Before the WRBP, I wasn't around. I wasn't living in New Hampshire, but I see the pictures, pea soup, toilet paper and unmentionables in lakes, algae blooms. Today, especially in, you know, communities that use tourism. I just heard about Bike Week, but, you know, all the other tourist activities and the economic developments in the Lakes region. You know, you have beautiful beaches where people want to come, a lot of water activities, and, you know, you can't put a price tag on the actual economic development and the environmental impacts that good sewer systems create. So, questions?
Thanks, Dr. McMillan. Really a remarkable story with the Winnipesaukee River Basin. One question I have, and you may have touched on it when you started the presentation, I was thinking about, it goes back to a discussion that goes back quite some time now, about how much of the system needs to be rebuilt, you know, in fairly short order, because it's really, it hasn't outlived its expected life. A lot of this stuff that's submerged as far as piping and pump stations and things like that. So how nobody wants to get hit with a giant bill to rebuild huge portions of it. So I guess, and maybe I should just bring myself up to date with your 5 and 10 year plan, but I've always been a little bit concerned about that. How are we preparing? How are you preparing for that?
Well, the capital improvement plan historically has focused primarily on the above ground facilities. They're easy to see, easy to maintain, easy to do a condition analysis and remaining useful life. The collection system, I guess the good news is there really is only 57 miles of it. It's all big, large pipe. The bad news is that about 17 miles of that is what we call force main, pressure pipe. And it's primarily ductile iron. And the geology in the Lakes region is such that the ductile iron corrodes. and it corrodes from the outside. And that is where we're having, and historically have had sewer breaks in our collection system. So the good news is our gravity sewers and our manholes have been inspected. They're in great shape. Unless somebody puts a phone pole through it, you know, or digs it up by accident during a construction project, we don't have a leaky system on the gravity sewer side, which is primarily the collection from, you know, long streets. The pressure pipe, the force mains, are out of pump stations, and so they're the motive force to push the sewage that's collected from the municipalities down to the treatment plant. And again, we have 14 of those pump stations, and those force mains vary from pretty short, few hundred feet, to 4 miles in one pressure pipe. The good news about that is we are securing some outside funding to evaluate and do either rehabilitation or replacement of those ductile iron pipes that have historically caused the breaches because of the outside corrosion. Laconia has one of the, I guess it's longer force mains. Our largest pump station in our entire system is at Winnisquam, which is where the old Laconia treatment plant used to be. That's the grounds that it was on. Luckily, that pressure pipe has not experienced any leaks. But we are going to be, over the next 10 to 15 years, going through and prospectively evaluating and rehabbing that pipe. Because just this, over the last 12 months, we've had 3 sewer line breaks in Belmont on a force main. And we're going to have to replace 4 miles of pipe. So, again, the good news about that is the way that our replacement fund, which is sort of like a contingency rainy day fund, it's actually money in the bank, is working, is that that is primarily assessed to the members using that particular pipeline. So, for example, the Belmont force main, 97% of that flow comes from Belmont, 3% comes from Northfield. Up until this last year, when the members decided to change the legislation fund, that would have been just assessed to Belmont and Northfield. Now it's assessed in a more complex way, where 50% is assessed to all the members based upon their use of the entire system, and 50% is just to Belmont and Northfield.
Does the flow from Laconia pass through other cities' pipes, though, that they are also flowing into?
Only the regional sewers.
Okay.
So, for example, the pump stations that come from Laconia going down to the treatment plant don't go and then enter Tilton's sewer system. They stay in the WRBP system once they're there. So it's not like it goes from Laconia to Tilton to back and forth.
Thanks. Any questions, Dr. McMillan?
Dr. McMillan, you were mentioning that you bill based on actual experience, a spike in electric rates. Some point, maybe we might be lucky where the market rebalances. I would assume at that point there'd be a potential credit if all other costs equaling the same.
Correct. Yes, it's prospective costs, but as I mentioned at the first, then it's always squared up the next fiscal year. So, for example, if we forecast that it's going to be 30% more electricity, and for whatever it comes in at 10%, and we've billed everybody prospectively on our best estimate, yes, communities would get a credit based upon that overbilling.
Mind if I ask a follow-up?
No, go ahead.
So in terms of, sorry?
Go ahead, yeah.
I guess maybe this might be a question for the city folks here in terms of when we get that credit, how to apply that in our rate setting process.
That I don't know.
Yeah.
That would be a city question.
It basically is a reimbursement back to us, and then we just use it to pay the next bill. So typically, maybe we're 100,000 back. So we guess sort of what it's gonna be in the rate adjustment, but it's never accurate. So it's a reasonable number is what we use. Yes.
Okay.
Have we ever had a credit?
Pardon?
Have we ever had a credit?
Yes.
How much? I mean.
I'd have to go
rough-
back and look. I know, admin, it was about 20,000, 30,000 one year. Sometimes it's been around 100,000 for the O&M. So it varies depending upon the year.
So if I understand you correctly, that's reflected in the next bill that goes out. When you take that credit, it just,
Yeah, it just correct. It comes back to us and
Gotcha.
basically we use it to pay the next bill.
gotcha, okay. Any other questions? Dr. McMillan, thank you very much for your time. It's nice to see you and appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Yes. Rennie, would you like to share anything with us? Hate to have you come all this way and not chat about something.
But I would say, just for the record, Rainey Pelletier, I'm the director of the Water Division, the basin, which is part of. But, you know, when you talk about, you look at the capital cost for the basin, and I first of all, I'll start by saying, we're probably the only state in the country that owns a wastewater treatment plant and regulate the plant at the same time. So it's, and you know how the state budget system goes, so it's an interesting process, to say least. But to show you the impact that the 40, 50, 60-year-old plants has had, Exeter just did a $50 million upgrade. Portsmouth did an $87 million upgrade. So all of this long-term construction projects are coming to roost because they're all 50, 60 years open. We had, just to show you what times have changed, back, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, we had a major water line break in Belmont. Yeah, it's not wastewater, but water. And when we dug it up, it was wooden pipe. So, I mean, the infrastructure over the years has changed so dramatically. But I think Sharon and her staff has done a great job in trying to level out the costs. I think the last 2 years, we didn't spend some money because we had COVID. We couldn't get pipe. And so rather than be irrational and take what the best deal was, which was many times we felt was ridiculous, we've kind of leveled that out, and I think she's done a really good job in doing that. And so I commend the people that work there. If you saw the wipes, I have staff that are down in pits taking that stuff out. So you think about what, kudos to them. You know, it's just, in the wastewater industry is, as you know, Mayor, and probably the rest of you, trying to find people that are interested in that world is difficult. So thanks for the opportunity, and as you know, I've known you for years. You can always, any questions, call, but I think all in all, I think the basin is a good project. It's been effective. As you know, I've been at the agency since '73, and I just turned 50, if you can believe that. I think back in the old days when the basin came about, it all was done by sampling of water quality. And what happened, Galton isn't part of the system because their water quality wasn't at risk. You know, when you get to the other parts, and that's how the communities were kind of designated. So it's been a great project, and I think the jewels of our lakes is, as you know, is really important. So thanks for the opportunity, and again, any of you, feel free to give me a call, and I'll call you back.
Thanks, Rennie. Thanks for the work you do. Thanks, Wes. Were you planning on saying something?
Just that we're working on our side of the house now to come back with a rate increase to make sure we have enough funds to pay for our share of it, as well as our share of the Winnipesaukee River Basin program. And right now, we're targeting to come back to the council with our concept on December 12th.
Okay. Councilor Lippman?
Infiltration is wasted wastewater, if you will, and I know that we've been working on that. I think for the benefit of the public, just part of the reason our flow percentage is going down is because we're doing preventative maintenance work to avoid unnecessary wastewater. Can you speak to that for a moment?
Yeah, that's why we've really been focusing on the Lakeport area for that's old clay pipe that's been about 100 years old. And we put in a new pump station because the old one was not up to snuff. It was having problems. We safe-sided that pump station to make sure it was going to handle the inflow. We didn't safe-side it enough. So that's why you see in all the money that we're putting into Lakeport right now to reduce that inflow and infiltration. So one, it reduces our cost at the Winnipesaukee River Basin program, but also reduces our requirements to go out in the middle of the night and bypass pump for that pump station. So it minimizes our chance of getting the EPA on our back, and it also reduces our costs.
Thanks, Wes. All right, I don't believe we have this was just a briefing, not necessarily, there's no motion or anything in
Just
front of
because
us.
we're gonna be coming back next
Yeah.
month with some stuff, we wanted you to have an update.
That's good. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the mayor's report, I will just briefly and echo certainly all the effort that went into our Christmas parade. And once again, whether the weather's inclement or just perfect, it was roundly applauded throughout the city. So thank you for all the effort for the groups and Celebrate Laconia that went into making this happen again. Since we do have a heavier agenda later on in the evening, I'm going to forsake any other comments, and I'll turn it over to the council for council comments. Councilor Felch.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that. Celebrate Laconia did a great job, especially with all the trees. Parks and Rec did a great job with the big tree in Stewart Park. But I'd like to see the city do something about the tree in Lakeport. We have a beautiful tree there that should have some lights on it.
Right. Councilor Haynes.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to mention the unfortunate passing of George Ferris. He served 3 consecutive terms in this chamber as councilman from Ward 4. He was a friend, he was a mentor, and he worked with us this past election, so his passing was untimely and unfortunate. The second thing I'd like to mention, if I might, is I think all of us got an email from Mike Mortensen, and I'd just like to say that in my dealings with him, he was always fair, and his writing was superb, and wish him well in his retirement. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. That raises a great issue. I'm wondering if maybe a proclamation is appropriate from City Council at some point to acknowledge his work. Any other council comments right now?
I'm gonna save you, Mr. Mayor.
That means you're loading up for something later.
There you go.
How about committee reports? Any committee reports this evening? Councilor Lippman.
Finance Committee met and worked with the administration on selecting a financing method for the totes that are going to support the changes in collection. That will have minutes available within 72 hours as required. But I think just to summarize, the Municipal Bond Bank had the best opportunity for us to finance that.
Great. Liaison reports, or I'll stay on committee reports if you like.
I just wondered, was there any finding on the problem of Elm Street School?
I'm sorry, I should have spoken up. We met, we reviewed a potential solution to the problem, or at least a temporary solution to the problem that involves Washington and what's the other street? Jefferson. And feeding children down through there. It will require some work by Public Works to put in a walkway, et cetera. We did discuss the potential to put a road through there, and there are issues, obviously, that we'll have to deal with at some later time. But at least for the moment, it appears that the solution will be to have a pathway that leads down to Washington and would feed children out to Jefferson where parents could meet them. And again, I
Thank you.
apologize for not speaking up.
Thank you, Counselor. Liaison reports, Counselor Susie.
In reference to the Laconia Water Department and the Water Commission, we are changing the date and time of our meetings. We've been normally meeting on Thursday morning at 8 a.m. We found that with the other members of the Water Commission, it's tough to work into a person's workday. So we're gonna be moving it to the Monday evenings of the non-council meetings at 6 p.m. So that's when we'll be having the meetings from now on, starting the first of the year.
Okay.
Makes it easier for the rest of the members of the Water Commission.
Thank you. Any other liaison reports this evening? Seeing none, under item number 19, this is citizens' request to comment on current agenda items. If there's a current agenda item you would like to speak to, now would be the appropriate time. Seeing none, we'll move along to item number 20, which is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Included in your packet is a couple of things I'll be talking about tonight. Laconia projects update is the first. As you see, as we're getting into that time of the year, some of the street and road projects are being completed. The large project that's been worked on all summer there, Mass Ave, Jefferson North, that area, as well as Addison Durkee, is being completed. This is some punch list stuff that they're taking care of. I won't talk about the Winnipesaukee River Basin projects. I think we talked about that through the presentation, but that will be coming forward again within the month. There's a sewer collection system project that'll be in Lakeport. That'll be worked on starting in the spring. That's been awarded. Under the Laconia Master Plan update, you'll note that it discusses the concerns about the planning department having necessary resources to handle the approvals, monitoring, development of the size with the state school. And I just want to make sure that, I know this has come up a few times, I just want to make sure that this is something that we're having continuous conversations about. Understanding that a lot of the specialty stuff that we need to go out and look at, whether it be construction company or any type of plans that we need to have reviewed. On some of the larger projects, we do that now, so we do have a history of doing that, and we'll certainly follow through with that with this as well. But we are having continuous conversations about what happens as this project grows, to make sure that it stays within the grasp of the city. So it's been mentioned at a couple different meetings. It got mentioned again here with the master plan update. We are aware of it, and we are staying up with it.
Great.
That's all I really have on the projects update. The economic development report is out. Unemployment rate is up a little bit compared to Belknap County and the state. We had been at or below it. Couple less than, about 0.2 percentage points swing either way. So we are seeing that as we're coming into this end of the year. And on the second page of CPI report, you'll note that it is down. It's under 8 for the first time since March, but it's still up a little bit and annualized out a little over 8% right now with a couple months left to go. So we are still probably looking at low 8s as being the number that we'll have, barring anything really weird happening in the next 2 months. The last thing I have for you is just, I did send this out. Our tax rate came out. The number was down $4.01 this year to $14.85 for our new tax rate. Most of that came in because the valuation of all the buildings in town are up significantly, just under $880 million increase in that. So I'm sure you guys have had questions. We've had questions to my office as well, where my valuation went way, way up. What's it gonna do to our tax rate or my tax bill? Tax rate is significantly down, so they'll start to see an offset that maybe a slight increase, but it will be very minimal.
Thank you. Any questions for the city manager? Councilor Lippman.
Just might be worth mentioning where people who haven't seen their tax bill yet, can get their valuation on Laconia appraisal?
Yep, the valuations are all on Laconia, the appraisal website, and tax bills have been sent out, so they should be seeing those very shortly.
Counselor Cheney.
I just, going back to the master plan update, as the council's rep to the master plan steering committee, I want to emphasize the committee's concern about the planning department in particular, and probably most departments in general. A review of their manning levels needs to be made. I suspect there's a number of us at this table who've received complaints about planning issues or code enforcement issues that go on for extended periods of time through no fault of the folks who are here, but through a fault of not being manned well enough to take care of all those problems. So I know the manager's looking at it. I just want to reinforce that council should be aware that we need to pay attention to that and make sure that review and upgrade of particularly enforcement in the planning department, but other areas as well, should be on our radar going forward. Thank you.
No, go ahead, Henry.
I just would echo what you're saying, and I think just from a standpoint of, let's not try to play catch-up on this. Is too big a thing to fall behind on, so it does take time to recruit talent, whether it be our own staff or outside consulting at this point, so.
Well, and if I might interrupt just briefly, I agree wholeheartedly with the idea of bringing in outside help in the short term. But this problem's just gonna get bigger and bigger, and I think now's the time. Getting ahead of the problem is something we ought to be seriously considering.
I guess what I was getting to was the complexity of the potential large project, that we identify resources and have them contracted before, we're trying to respond to something.
I agree wholeheartedly. I would also say, if we're gonna add staff internally, it's a great opportunity for them to learn from the people we contract with, so we ought to give that some thought as well.
Counselor Haynes.
Thank you. Kurt, I'm sure you're familiar with the situation. Is there any activity as far as Bay Street, that fire?
No, I know there is there's been some interest in the property, but there's so much work with cleanup and everything, so that there really hasn't been. So unfortunately, there's really nothing.
Okay.
Just
Thank you.
just from a historical standpoint, we one time had a property that had a major fire in it, and the city had to take some action to actually take down the property. It might be good to review what we did in that circumstance that might be applicable here ultimately.
Yeah, I certainly can. I think what it really is gonna boil down to, and it is, I think that's a short-term answer. I think long-term, we just need an ordinance change that's going to be able to push a little faster. Unfortunately, usually what happens is, it gets held up in insurances and claims, and there's a long wait period, but on issues like this, I think, we need to work towards an ordinance change that will help give us some teeth to be able to move, property owners along.
I guess,
Go right ahead, sure.
I think we had an instance where it wasn't moving, and we're able to take some action. Offline, I can fill you in what I think.
Yeah, I'm just trying, I mean, I know we've had a couple, but yeah, just if you let me.
Probably know us,
Yeah,
being in the department.
I think I know which one you're talking about, but yeah, we can talk about it and we can pull up exactly the process we went through.
That's fine.
Yep.
Counselor Susie?
All I was gonna ask the city manager is if we could get together and put together the ordinance requirements. I could bring it up in front of the committee and then bring it forward to the city council.
Yep, we can discuss that.
I think that's part of government operations, that's why I wanted to bring that up.
So, we're going to begin now on agenda item 21, new business, and 22, unfinished business. I just want to let people know that I would like to go into non-public session at the end of the agenda. When we come back into session after non-public, it will only be to adjourn the city council meeting. We will not take up any new business. So, new business, item 21A, appointment of Wes Anderson, Public Works Director, as a commissioner on the Lakes Region Planning Commission. City of Laconia is eligible for up to 3 commissioners on the Lakes Region Planning Commission. Commissioners are appointed for staggered 4-year terms. Jeffrey Hayes, Executive Director of LRPC, has confirmed that city staff members may be appointed to the commission. We are looking to appoint Director Anderson to the remainder of a term previously held by Assistant Planning Director. This term will expire at the end of June 2025. Right now, I'll be looking for a motion to move to appoint Wes Anderson, Public Works Director, as a Commissioner of the Lakes Region Planning Commission to fill the remainder of the term previously held by Rob Mora, expiring at the end of June 2025. So made by Councilor Susie, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Is there any discussion?
I just had one question. It notes that they can be city employees, but do they have to be?
It seems to be permissible, not mandatory, but that's how I read it, but I don't know.
That's how I read it as well.
Because it does say these people are no longer doing it because they're no longer city employees. So did they also not want to do it? I mean, were they offered to stay on as a commissioner?
My guess is it was not discussed.
Councilor Felch, I don't know if we have the information to answer that question, quite frankly. I don't know.
So in that case, I'd like to.
I'll second that.
Non-debatable motion. All those in favor of tabling this motion,
Well,
please indicate by.
I think we're just talking about C, tabling C.
Well, I was thinking A, B, and C.
You were, okay.
Yeah.
I apologize.
I don't know if we need a motion on each one of them to
Yeah.
table. Probably.
No.
I believe so.
If I may, just remind, that one of the requirements is they live within Belknap County.
Uh-huh.
So in the case of my former assistant, she doesn't, so she's not eligible to be on it anymore on the Transportation Advisory Committee.
Okay, that's with Krista, but we don't know about Rob or.
Rob, I don't know about.
I guess I agree with the motion that's non-debatable, but I think it might be good to take a step back in terms of what
Yeah,
we're
I
looking
think
to
we
accomplish.
should table all and find out more information about that.
I can take care of that.
Because I feel they should be offered to stay on if they meet the requirements.
My suggestion would be to,
Refer to,
well, yes, I think refer it to the city manager to get this information, but I think this is certainly something that instead of tabling these motions, we should be working on probably ahead of time and clarifying the issue. I mean, I understand sometimes it's going to arise at the city council meeting, but certainly something that if we'd done a little groundwork, we might have been able to either change this and keep him and not have to bring the appointments forward, or move the appointment forward.
Mr. Mayor, I think that there was a misunderstanding in terms of who would bring the appointment forward. It didn't go through our normal process.
Right.
I think that was just a transitional misunderstanding in terms of who does what with it. I don't think that's why it's coming up like this.
Okay, so, there's a motion to table, the appointment of Wes Anderson to the Lakes Region Planning Commission. It's non-debatable. There's a, made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Cheney. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. It's 4 votes in the affirmative, opposed, 1 opposed. That motion passes. The item is tabled. Moving on to item 21B, which is the appointment of Dean Trefethan, Planning Director, as a Commissioner on the Lakes Region Planning Commission, Transportation Advisory Committee.
Motion to table?
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Littman. It's non-debatable. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your hands. That's 4 votes in the affirmative. Anyone opposed? 1. Motion passes. That item is tabled. Under item number 21C, appointment of Wes Anderson, Public Works Director, as an alternate on the Lakes Region Planning Commission, Transportation Advisory Committee.
Motion to table?
Is there a second? So seconded by Counselor Littman. It's non-debatable. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. 4 votes opposed, 4 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. That item is tabled. I would, as a issue of process, going forward, these recommendations for appointment should be going through the Appointments Committee, chaired by Counselor Susie, is it?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Under item number 21D, which is the downtown TIF financing update. City manager has provided us with an update on the a financing update. I'd ask him to lead us through this if he would.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, we were asked to take a look at the downtown parking study and sort of project out, the downtown TIF and project out, what this looks like over the next, number of years. If you look on the second page of your handout, you'll see that we start out at, just over 909,000. It breaks down into then what we put into it. So we put in 250,000 last year, 250, or this fiscal year. We moved that forward, sort of using that number as a guidepost. It pays towards the bond for the Colonial Theater at 210,000. The payment of the 2015 bond is a percentage of the total for the Main Street Bridge project. And then there's parking garage security cameras, which also comes out of that. The 59,000, which is the downtown parking study, has not come out of it yet. It has been paid, but has not come out of this yet, and that sort of will be finalized with determination of what happens later on as we discuss the parking garage. So we march this down with the payment of the 2015 bond, times out in 2034. We then adjusted the amount of money that we would put into the revenue. Again, this is an estimate. We took that 85,000 out approximately from 2035 on. So the amount that, again, estimating to put in. And you'll see the net balance on the right-hand side slowly working its way down, and then balancing out around that in the mid-140s. So, again, those are all on projections as to an estimate of how much we would put in each year, and trying to march it out for, 20 years is, again, estimates. But that's where it looks as of right now.
Counselor Susie, raise your hand for a question.
Sure. Kirk, Mr. Manager, sir, on the 250 I'm putting in, why is that a set rate? Why is it not, how we determine that rate?
It's based on the percentage of the increment that we can take out. We can only do up to 50% of the increment for each of the TIF districts.
I'm trying to understand what the formula is.
That was set as a,
Perhaps Counselor Littman, who's
yeah.
besides the
Glenn might be,
inception.
Glenn
Okay,
might be
okay.
better at it, but I think generally the big concept is that when someone makes an improvement,
Right.
there's a certain portion that goes not untaxed, but the portion of increased value ends up funding the TIF. And so I think the 250 probably represents a balance that you reasonably are seeing now that will reflect
Continuously move forward.
as we move forward.
Yep.
So I think that's,
Okay.
Barring any major, improvements or the
changing
other way.
Or changing
or
the
the other way.
geography of the
Right.
TIF district or something else like that,
yeah,
right?
we probably won't change the geography of the TIF district. I think that's kind of firmed up, but I think
But like-
the issue, what happens within it.
Similar to what we're seeing in Lakeport, where it hasn't actually earned an increment over the last number of years. With the changes that we're seeing now, it will. So,
And then
Yep.
the bond is how long? How many years?
On
which one? The Colonial?
Colonial bonds,
The
$210,000.
2043.
So that's the end of the bond year.
No, actually, the Colonial bond goes through 2045. So there's 2 more years of payments that aren't on here only because we picked a 20-year schedule for this. But it pretty much is designed to stay the same. Yeah, and if I could say the purpose of the TIF is to fulfill the projects that are approved by this body as part of the plan. So, and I think part of the vote in the 250 is to give the TIF kind of a soft landing. Had a fairly large balance, and the way it's designed right now is to kind of bring that balance down incrementally over the years. And as you see in, as the city manager was saying, about 2034 is where we hit kind of a plateau on that.
If I could, it's a particular project that is an improvement, has a period of time where it's contributing to the TIF, and then eventually it phases down as well, right? That's part of the equation.
It really depends upon the project and how you set it. For example, the security cameras could in theory go on forever.
No, I'm talking about the revenue side of it, that when a project comes online, there's a portion before we fully recognize that that project, right? In other words, it's years before it will come fully onto the tax rolls, as opposed to contributing a portion, or are we keeping it on for a scheduled time?
If I understand the question correctly, it stays on again forever. So what I like to say, just say at the time that the TIF was created, the value of the district was, just picking a number arbitrarily, $50 million.
Yeah.
As time goes on, that value increases to 60. That $10 million is the increment. And the taxes earned by that $10 million has a potential for going into this fund, depending on what you vote. So as long as there is an
So the question is, if I hear you correctly, is that $10 million increment, does that continuously or ad infinitum feed the TIF fund balance, or does it come off and go into general tax revenue at some point?
It continually has a potential to go into the TIF. Nothing automatically goes into the TIF. The 250 is approved by you as part of the annual budget. You may very well decide to not put anything into the TIF next year.
Okay.
But you have the ability to decide how much goes in on any given year, up to a certain limit. I mean, depending upon how the numbers work
If the
out.
building goes away, it goes off the,
That's correct. That's
So if a building is improved, or new building is done, then that dollar should be.
Dollar amount improvement would go into the TIF.
Exactly, I was just trying to understand. If there's a formula to that, you take your 10 million, for example, and let's say we say, well, we should put some money into the regular tax fund. So we say 50-50, or whatever we decide to do. Okay, some would go to the TIF fund, some might just go regular tax funds.
so I think it's based on the commitments, the long-term commitments we make drives what we have to put in there. So Colonial Theater, as an example.
Yeah.
We've committed to funding a,
For the next 23 years.
We need to make sure we put enough
money.
money into that, and that's a
Cover that.
big.
Right.
Yes, I'll give you an example. St. Holy Trinity School is gonna be
right.
populated here soon. The value of that building, even though we put it under that other
79E.
thing, is gonna have a significant increase in value. So.
Right, but I think the idea is to continue to feed the TIF so
Right,
it
that's
fulfills
what I
its
wanna do.
commitments going forward.
Right.
At some point, those commitments will drop off, say with the Colonial bond payment. We may have additional commitments, or then further, councils may have additional commitments to that. They might want to draw down off a TIF, or they may not.
Believe it or not, the bridge may have to be replaced.
I was gonna say, it's not gonna happen.
Do ADA downtown. You talk about some dollars, it's ADA downtown.
Okay, that's good. All right, thank you very much. And that is very helpful, I think. Maybe put it on just a yearly refresher so we always know where we're at, because those numbers get out of whack. Sometimes, as it is in downtown, we're thinking, why do we have almost $1 million sitting in TIF, and what's to become of it? But
Part of it was the inclusion of the Colonial project and the TIF, but the time it took to actually get the project going, so.
right. Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, that makes good sense. Okay, so, thank you. I don't think there's no motion associated with that. There wouldn't be. We'll move on to item number 21E, which is the 2022 second half sewer warrant per chapter 189-50, capital C, collection of a flat rate sewer accounts are collected by the tax collector. Right now, we're looking to collect $143,895. Katie Gargano, our tax collector, has recommended that we move to approve the 2022 second half sewer warrant in that amount. Be looking for a motion to do so. So made by Counselor Susie, seconded by Counselor Felch. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. 4 votes in the affirmative, opposed, 0, so that motion has been adopted. Moving on to item number 22A, which is our unfinished business here. This would be our, this is what Superintendent Tucker addressed earlier this evening. This with our Laconia School District is eligible to receive, as a result of SB 420, $367,796 from this grant, which is relating to a supplemental appropriation to accommodate acceptance of an exceptional needs grant by the Laconia School District. As superintendent has indicated on both occasions he's been here recently, the school district is planning on using the funds for a dual-purpose van to transport students and food supplies, improved technology, instructional supplies, and professional development for staff. And these funds are unanticipated revenue per RSA 31:95-b and City Code Section 5:06. A public hearing is required to accept and expend these funds. Right now, we have a series of 3 motions in order for us to accept it. First one would be a motion to move waive a reading of this resolution in its entirety and to read by title only. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Is there any further discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, it says fiscal impact of 376,000, but where the other is 367,000. Can I ask which one is correct?
You should. Not only can you, you should be asking that. We've got a discrepancy of 367 or 376. Do we know the exact number on that? 67 or 76? Yeah, sure. Counselor Susie.
Well, waiting for that number, I just have a procedural question. I'm in support of the motion with the right number. In terms of the supplemental appropriation, and I just have a recollection here, and it may be an incorrect recollection, that certain of these require a time period to pass before we can adopt, whether we're permissible on something like this large to do that in one meeting, or it may be that I'm remembering on that it's just administratively, things under 10,000 don't require to come to council. I just looking to refresh my memory on what the technicalities are on these types of motions.
The under 10,000 allows it in one meeting for you guys to approve. The over 10,000 is the 2 meeting, that's as far as all I know procedurally that we need to follow.
So this would require 2 meetings because of what you're saying?
We did. This is the second.
Okay.
This is the second of the 2.
I missed the meeting.
Yep.
So.
No, that's fine. This is the second of the 2.
Yep.
Oh, right, yes, yeah, this is
Sorry.
right. Okay, I forgot that you had missed that meeting. Yes. Do you have the correct number? Come right up, sure.
$367,796.
All right, so we are looking to accept $367,796.
I guess one other procedural question. What was it posted as?
It's correct on the resolution on the second page.
Okay. Very good. Okay.
All right. All those in favor of the motion, which is to waive the reading, please indicate by raising your hands. 5 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Second motion we'll be looking for is to move to approve a second reading of Resolution 2022-15 relative to making a supplemental appropriation for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 and terminating June 30th, 2023. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Lippman. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. That's 5 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. And finally, we're looking for a motion to approve Resolution 2022-15 as presented and authorize the city manager to sign all related documents. So made by Counselor Lippman, seconded by Counselor Felch. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. That's 5 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Thank you. Sorry about that. I'd forgotten that you weren't here for that. We should have clarified it for you. Yeah. We had a presentation. Agenda item 22B, second reading of ordinance 2022-195-10 to amend City Code, Chapter 195, Special Events and Outdoor Assembly, Section 195-10, the fee schedule. We had a public hearing earlier this evening. So we would be looking for a series of 3 motions. The first one is to waive a reading of this ordinance in its entirety and to read by title only, so made by Counselor Haynes, seconded by Counselor Felch. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Second, we're looking to move a second reading of ordinance 2022-195-10, so made by Counselor Felch, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. It's 5 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. And finally, looking for a motion to move to approve ordinance 2022-195-10 as presented, so made by Counselor Susie, seconded by Counselor Lippman. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. It's 5 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Item number 22C, which is the approval of the revised welfare guidelines. Some question was brought up at the previous hearing, and this was discussed. There was some question. It was tabled as the question was addressed. We'll be looking for a motion to move it off the table. So made by Counselor Felch, seconded by Counselor Cheney. All those in favor of moving it off the table, please indicate by raising your hands. 5 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. The item is now off the table. Before going too far along on this, Mr. Smith, would you just can you tell us exactly where that issue was resolved, on what page here?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's actually two issues. Well, we had a good conversation, a series of emails with Mr. Wood, and some of his concerns were just resolved through further explanation. There were 2 that resulted in a change, and the first of those is on page 8 or 34, depending on which page numbers you're looking at, the bottom. And the item in red relates to what happens, or what the procedures are if an applicant intentionally files a falsified statement or misrepresentation. And I can let you read through that, and in brief, it's they will disqualify themselves from receiving assistance and may be prosecuted. Now, Mr. Wood suggested an alternate language, which is what you're seeing in here. And I'll say in my non-lawyer mind, it says the same thing. But when you have somebody who has made his living, adjudicating, and he suggests some good language, it pays to listen. So we've substituted his language in here, and I think it makes for
And this allows for, if someone fraudulently either files or does in fact collect, it gives the city the right to recoup the assistance and deny them assistance going forward based on this either attempted or successful fraudulent act.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay?
Which is the current policy, so the policy itself is not changed, just the language. Next, going to page 10 or 36. And this one is not in red. But it's in the section, the third section down, called rental arrearage. The last sentence now reads, "The city will pay arrearage to a shelter retroactive to the date the application is filed if the application is accepted and the applicant is deemed to be eligible. Remember, this is where we had the discussion earlier where previously this read, we will not pay back, we will not make payments prior to the time the application was approved. And I think we spent some time talking past each other at the last meeting where we got this resolved. So under the new language is that if you're sitting at the Belknap House, you file an application, it is approved, then the application, then the assistance can be retroactive the day you turn the application in.
So are you confident that the use of the word will as opposed to may is appropriate?
Well, as a bureaucrat, I always like to have the flexibility of may, but I think it's appropriate in this case, only because the rest of the sentence has some very specific conditions that have to be met. And if those conditions are met, there should be some kind of reasonable expectation.
Just one of the questions that came up, just for edification, is that if someone were to apply and deemed 3 days after date of application that they are in fact eligible, should the previous couple of nights be paid for? Because they were eligible when they filed. Just took us 3 days to make that determination. And I think that was the issue that Mr. Wood brought up during the previous hearing.
Makes sense.
Counselor Cheney.
My only concern with will as opposed to may is it's, given the situation we're in right now with the agencies we're dealing with right now, I'm not sure in the future, for instance, if it's a profit facility or something like that, I'm not sure. I don't know that I even know what I'm talking about, but it does make me nervous.
I guess I'd suggest with the homelessness situation that we're all trying to overcome, that's gotten worse. I think, continuing to evaluate this policy for whether we need additional flexibilities or whether it's not working right is probably, this is something we ought to be reviewing more frequently.
Agreed.
Yep.
I hear your concerns. That was my concern as well, but I agree. Okay. So thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to draw our attention to?
There is one other item that come up since this was printed and distributed to you, and that is on page 20 or 46 on what's called the fair hearings, which is a appeal process that all people who are denied assistance have a right to appeal that decision. And I thank Councilor Cheney for bringing this up. As far as why are those called fair hearings, and I'll tell you right now, I don't know. What I can tell you is that it's not in the statute that that's the name, but it is so commonplace in New Hampshire that that's just what all parties have called it for as long as I know. And I think the confusion in reading through this is that in some places where it's not capitalized, it's kind of easy to be misinterpreted that when we say prior to the fair hearing, that word fair is not a title, but a descriptor. So just to clear that up.
Implying what took place before it was unfair.
Was unfair, that's correct. We're just proposing that this be amended to capitalize fair hearing so that it's obvious that we're talking about a process that is called fair hearing.
Right.
Okay.
As opposed to making a judgment call on that.
That makes sense.
Okay. Any questions, Mr. Smith? Thank you very much for digging in a little deeper on that.
You're welcome.
So right now, I'll be looking for a motion to move to adopt the revised welfare guidelines as presented. So made by Counselor Felch, seconded by Counselor Susie. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. That's 5 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Item number 22D, which is a request from the United States Postal Service to lease parking spaces in the city parking lot behind St. Joseph's Church. This item is currently on the table, we would need a motion to take it off the table to go any further. Would you like to make that motion?
Yeah, take it off.
Is there a second, Counselor Lippman, second by Counselor Haynes? All those in favor of the item coming off the table, please indicate by raising your hands. 3 opposed. 3 votes to take it off the table, 2 to leave it on the table. The motion passes. Perhaps we should figure out what... Kirk, why don't you lead? Any new additional information?
The only new information is I had asked them for a lease, a draft of a lease agreement to see what they, what they were looking for, where they go, other places. They finally got one to me just today, late today. I got it. I've been saying 9 to 15 spots. It's 14 that they're looking for. That's what they're 14 spots. There's the 80 spots in there. 10 of them are through the lease agreement are available for the church. That question came up as how many spots, because there was some earmarked for them. It's 10. This is confirmed to be for their postal vehicles as an additional place to store their vehicles. They didn't say this, but my guess is either one of 2 things. Either they're gaining more vehicles to drive around in, or they're looking for more parking for their customers, and they're going to use that side. So one of the 2. They didn't really describe either one. They're looking for multi-year leases. They didn't come up with pricing. I'm still working on some comparatives to other places that are doing that, so I don't have those answers for you tonight, but I am working on some comparatives to other places that do lease parking spots. So if it was to move forward, if you choose to want to continue this down the road, as under consideration, I would have some financial numbers for you the next time.
Counselor Susie.
I guess I'd like to go back and maybe table this until after the 12th, because we're not, don't have numbers yet. Give us another council meeting to discuss this and get into it towards the end of the year.
I'll second that motion.
There's a motion to retable.
Yes.
What do you think, Henry?
Well, I guess what you're saying, if I could, is rather than tabling it, you want to not schedule a public hearing until we have the numbers and a chance to
More data.
converse. So I don't know that we need to table it as opposed to just to establish a meeting date, a hearing date that's, at the call of the city manager, because he's ready and we've had a chance to discuss it.
We have a motion, however.
I was gonna say is
Seconded.
Which is
I
going to
motion to table again.
effectively be the same.
Bruce did, excuse me, Council Cheney seconded that.
Okay.
It's a distinction without difference, I think what you're pointing out, and
Right.
so I'm not going to argue about it.
I feel like tabling is like a hanging chad.
Well, I think the
Just,
council wants to know the answers to the questions
Fair enough, but I
before
think
they schedule a meeting.
Well, we could also put it off to to a January meeting to discuss it as well, instead of just leaving it on the table and hanging on the agenda. Choice is yours. Well, why don't we just call the motion? Look, go ahead.
If I can ask, I mean, if, as opposed to our tabling motion, you give the manager instructions to bring this back in January, I can live with that.
Me too.
I think it's premature to act on it right now. I think January
Okay.
might give us enough time, and so you'd have to withdraw your motion.
Yes.
I withdraw.
Second, okay. You with us, Katie?
I'll get there.
So the motion to table has been withdrawn.
Yeah, I erased it.
Okay. All right, so,
Motion is to hold a public hearing either at the first or second meeting in January based on an update from the manager.
if I may, just to make sure I'm confirmed to what you're looking for, you willing to schedule the public hearing in January, and I will get you the information ahead of time, so you have it, so we don't need to have another meeting and then a public hearing. We can just schedule a public hearing for January.
okay, all right.
If that work, I'm just clarifying for,
Contingent on you having the numbers that.
we'll have financial numbers for you to review and kind of make a decision based on, I'll give you a couple paths to look at.
Set a date, if we're not ready, we just reschedule it at the subsequent.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
one
Yeah,
more
but you're
question.
scheduling a public hearing. I don't want to schedule a public hearing until we have that information.
He's thinking that January something would be plenty of time to get it to us.
I understand that, but I might not like that information.
Okay.
Well, even if you don't like the information, it still goes before a public hearing, you can cast your vote accordingly.
Should we also
I
ask?
think you're
for-
gonna like the information no matter what.
That's right.
I think you're right.
There's no reason to
And
stick in the
It's
wheel
only
here.
one, okay. Should we ask that also somebody from that department be here to ask any questions?
United States Postal Service?
I mean, they gotta do something. I don't get mail 6 days a week
don't know.
anymore.
How about you, maybe we can instruct the city
Ask,
manager to at
request.
least make the request. How's that?
I can make the request. The person I'm dealing with is in DC, but I'll see if they're willing to get a local representative to.
No, I can't get the local representative
Well,
on the phone or anything else.
They could zoom in, right?
They could zoom in.
Yeah, we could.
Cliff Clavin, come and meet with us. So, okay, so I think we can have this motion here then, can't we? And just change the date to the last meeting in January, which would be January
23rd.
January 23rd.
Gives us enough time.
And if it doesn't, we'll move it well ahead of
We're
time. Okay.
moving as fast as the Laconia Booster.
So I'd like to make a motion, we're looking for a motion to move to
So
schedule a
moved.
public hearing on January 23rd, 2023, during the regular city council meeting to gather public input on the request from the United States Postal Service to lease parking spaces in the city parking lot behind St. Joseph's Church. Counselor Cheney has made the motion, seconded by Counselor Susie. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. That's 4 votes in the affirmative. Opposed is Counselor Felch. That motion passes.
Yes.
Been a long evening, hasn't it, Carries? Welcome back.
Let's get this done.
Item number 22E. This is in regards to the request from the Carries. And the Weirs Beach Pedal Boats to operate a pedal boat business using the city docks and space on the boardwalk in Weirs Beach. First thing we need to do is make a decision as to whether we should take this item off the table. So made by Counselor Felch. Is there a second? Done by Counselor Cheney. All those in favor of taking the item off the table? 5 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. The item is now off the table. So, Kirk, City Manager, could you maybe just brief us as what's transpired? Over the past
Sure.
few
So I think there was a couple things that came up at the last meeting. One was to look at what a draft lease would look like, and I did forward that out to you. I will bring it through legal at the last, but this is almost a carbon copy of what we've done in leases past, so it's pretty close. We'll make sure it goes through legal. The other piece with it that came up was, you had asked the carriers to go through the Mount Washington Cruises Corporation to work on an MOU for safety purposes between the two. Mr. Carey would be glad to speak, I'm sure, but they did meet. I did forward you some information that they had. Sounds like it was good meeting, but they're not willing to go into writing to say this is our safety. In the draft lease that you wouldn't have it. I did add a couple of the safety things that they had talked about with the Mount Washington, as well as some recommendations that the carriers have added as well for some additional safety purposes. So I think that's really where we stand. In there was financial agreements and some timeframes. I did get some comments. I've talked to a couple of you. One of them was as to whether or not we were going to do the same multi-year lease at the low price that I stuck in there, or if we were going to evaluate it after a year or 2 years or however you wanted to do it. That's not reflected in what you have there because it was just spoken. I had already sent it to you, so I didn't want to make any changes to that there. So that's really where we stand. If you decide you want to move this process forward and allow them to do this, we'll finalize those few details. And if you have anything in the lease agreement that you saw, I'll doctor that up and get this to legal, and we'll have it finalized. But that'll be housekeeping issues at that point, and they can move forward with ordering their crafts.
Council Cheney, this is in your ward.
It is.
I'd like to take
I,
the lead a little bit here.
I think I'm the one who expressed some concerns about the relationship with the Mount Washington. I'm satisfied with what occurred, and if I may, I'd like to make a motion to move this item along.
There's a second from Counselor Susie. Any further discussion? I'll clarify the motion a little bit here, but go.
Want
yes,
to
go
let you
ahead.
clarify first? and
Why
then
don't I
see
do
if
that?
have
Yeah, so the motion that Counselor Cheney, and correct me if I'm wrong, Counselor Cheney, it's a motion to approve the request from Weir's Beach Pedal Boats to operate a pedal boat business using the city docks and space on the boardwalk in Weir's Beach as presented. Adding to that, though, we have a lease document coming from the city manager, which will go through legal and come back to us for approval.
Is that necessary?
You should have, well, it would be the draft with a couple of just corrections. I'll have to change the written MOU to an agreement with,
I don't have the language. Were we supposed to get that document you're referring to here?
that was sent.
Was it? I do not have, it's not attached to my, that's all.
It's not in the packet? Oh,
Not in the packet.
Okay.
Would you like to look at it?
Yes, please.
yeah, I know, it was, okay, I don't know why it wasn't in
Sent
the,
separately.
in the packet. It was sent separately, I'm not sure why I didn't make the packet.
Okay.
So, you know, like I said, a couple of housekeeping issues. The written agreement with the Mount will have to be a, you know, annual discussion or something like that over safety, and then,
It may have been come to me, I just haven't caught up to it yet.
Me too. The lease rate of the dock is what?
we,
That
we,
you put in here?
we did $1.
$1
Yeah.
per year?
Yep.
And the term of the lease agreement is
I believe it was 3 years on the first one.
Yeah, it was 3 years.
3 years.
Since we're in a discussion portion, basically, I'd like to see it be able to be reevaluated after a year and an option to get out of the lease if there's some reason we think we would have. But I don't see that happening, but I'd like to see it done.
I don't either, Mr. Mayor, but I think past experience tells us that multi-year leases may not be in the city's best interest.
And I don't
Well,
mind the multi-year lease, but having that option after
understand.
1
Yep,
year.
we could,
Right.
yep, we can certainly,
Right, I think we just want an opportunity
Yeah.
that if something were to go woefully awry here, by chance,
Right.
We would have the ability to get out. And also, too, that they would have the ability to get out if something were to go
Right.
really wrong on their end. I think we'd all be comfortable with
Yep.
that. I'd be comfortable with it. Take a look at that. Okay. Do you have the motion, Katie? Since it seemed like it.
Yes, I think the motion was made and seconded.
Yes, but do you have the
And
language?
And then you had contingent upon the lease going through legal and then returning back to the council for approval.
I don't think we need, I think we're just authorizing the city manager after review to sign it.
So I'd just ask a question, if I could, like, have the liability been reviewed by Primex in terms of whether they think it's adequate provision in there?
no, that was part of the, yep. Yep, I'd planned on following up with them as part of the legal review.
I mean, in concept, I'm with everybody else on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I am too.
And
I
I've
just wanna
read,
make sure we're
I've
tight.
read through it, I'm pretty happy with it, so.
I just wanna make sure we're tight. In concept, I am as well, and I'm glad you said that. That's great. Okay, any further discussion on this motion that's,
So just clarify what the motion is again?
don't ask me to.
So,
Katie, if you've got it, let's see what Katie's got written down.
Are we adding in the language of?
I don't know, if it necessarily, I'm
A
sorry.
review after 1 year, or the ability of canceling, is that being?
I think
No,
that will be added to the lease.
I think that'll
it
actually be in
has
the
to
language of the lease. I
reflected.
think
part
you're
of the
absolutely right,
discussion. That's
yes.
just part of the discussion,
so
not the
we
motion.
want to see the final version of the lease before final approval, right?
No,
Or
I thought
are
that
we
was up to
asking-
city manager.
We're fine with the city manager,
As long as it's
as long as it
consulted
passes
with
legal.
legal
Yeah,
and with
yeah, yeah.
um,
And with
I
that
had planned on
change.
doing that anyhow.
and
Yep.
liability.
Yep.
I'm comfortable
With
with
the
that.
changes that we,
Liability through Primex? Is that what you said?
Liability, I think just generally liability and and make sure that the city's protected.
And also the language about being able to get out of a lease
In 1 year.
if there's a cause.
So I'll put it in, if I may.
It doesn't have to become part of the motion, I think it's just necessarily.
Yeah, we'll do, if I may, I'll do it for multi-year with an evaluation after a year for either side to, walk away from the leases,
And I think we should just, let the Carries know since you're here. I think it's always good after your first year of operation, or even in the middle of that year, if you have any time to come and just check in about what's going well, and if we're getting feedback from people, if we hear feedback, we send it through the city manager, who will be the point of contact, so you don't have multiple people from the city council calling you with various complaints. I think it should go through him. But I mean, I think we should keep communication frequent and open. Okay?
Compliments they'll take, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Of course. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your hands. That's 5 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Good luck. Good luck and thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be in contact.
No, apologize.
Mr. Mayor, if I might just take a moment, I've signed this tax warrant, but it's somewhat under protest, because it says in here that the clerk, in the name of the said city, you are directed to collect at once of the several persons named in the list
Oh, and I didn't include. the
herewith.
list.
Ain't
What
that
about
kind of money.
the people who are using the damn thing? I don't want to pay this.
It's only the people that are being billed it. It's not everybody.
Says collected
But it's
from
got a
us.
seal and you've already signed it.
I have, I
All
say,
right,
I
just
signed
keep
it
signing.
under protest.
Okay, fair enough. All right,
Just what I need, another.
We're just gonna bill everything to Bruce,
Yeah,
that's all.
right. Yeah, he can afford it.
Yep, that's it.
Mr. Bogert, anything you'd like to share with us this evening? Okay, nice to have you here as usual. Okay, so moving on to item number 22F, which is continued discussion regarding the downtown parking garage. Every time we talk about the downtown parking garage, I still think of Counselor Bounce. His very strong feelings. His very, very strong feelings. And somewhere up there, he's looking down, chuckling. Right?
Laughing, absolutely.
He's cackling
Yes.
at us. that We're
Yes.
still talking about it. On October 24th, as this indicates, I'd hoping to open it up for further discussion, just in light of the fact that we have our parking report, which is indicating a potential deficit of 37 spaces. If we had 3 shows going on downtown, it was in December High and shopping month, and all church services were going on at the same time. But otherwise, we seem to be okay with parking spaces next 10 years, absent some sort of explosion in development, which is always possible. And my reservation on this has really been what I think is the escalating cost to do the work on this. And also, I think what we saw was a limited sample, but it was clear. Most people don't like to use the parking garage. And just wondering, really, wouldn't it be in the best interest of the city, before we commit $6, $8, $10 million and a renovation, to at least get some sense, is there anyone out there who could take a look at this garage and have an innovative idea as to what they could do with it? Ultimately, I'd love to save the city $10 million, $6, $8, $10 million. There are a couple of things that we still desperately need in the city. Housing, for one. An idea, one thing that circulated at the middle of this year, a few months ago, is some of the work that's been done. I think it's in Lowell, Massachusetts, when they took a parking garage and put playing fields on top of it. I'm not saying that's what we're going to do here, but I'm just saying that we've got, besides tearing it down, are there other uses that perhaps would remove this liability from taxpayers and really create something there that is of greater benefit to everyone in this city? And that's really what I would like to suggest, that perhaps putting out a request for expressions of interest, even if it's just for a limited period of time, and seeing if we get something that comes into this city that says, you know, I've got a great idea to develop this and use housing and make it more welcoming at the headway to our main street in the city of Laconia. And so that's what I'd just like to put in front of the council right now and get your thoughts. Councilor Susie.
I know you mentioned housing, but I think I wouldn't limit it to anything at this point. Let the city manager go out and see what he gets for an
Expression of interest, yeah.
Expression of interest.
Yep.
You know, give us $1 and you get the scrap metal or whatever, you know, however way it works out. Listen to any ideas that come in. Because I know there's one thing, and I mentioned it to Wes earlier, we got a big nut to crack with ADA downtown. Okay, and there's gonna be a lot of dollars involved in that and a lot of this whole area. So, yeah, I'd be fine with that. That's me.
I think currently the parking study, and we're going to get a downtown urban study sometime in the next, by the end of the year.
Yeah, we're
correct?
close, yep.
And we've been able to sort of work along on parallel lines with some of the initial work that's being done by, I believe, Peter Stewart and is it Du Bois and King who's working on that still?
Yes. Yep.
You know, it's money. Don't get me wrong, and we should be cautious with it, but you know, we haven't made it such a significant commitment that we're in too far to turn back at this point. And I just wonder, just we can still continue on during this period. So we're still moving on two parallel paths.
Is there actually, I'm sorry.
So can we get an update as to where we're at, how much money we've spent? Are we on schedule in the process that has already been approved by the city council?
I think we've got an update on something.
Yeah, so, if we were just to put a hold on it right now and stop, it'd be about $36,000 to $40,000 we'd have to spend just on services already rendered by, Bonnet Page and Stone, Du Bois and King, and a little bit of work that we'll have to do just to make sure that we're keeping our safety pieces of it up, you know, where it's still being used. So relatively limited, if you will. I mean, I know it's not free money, that amount of money, but it's relatively limited compared to what it will look like. Moving forward, if we were to hold this on for another year or so, probably another $30,000-ish on an estimate for safety, and just that same preventative upkeep to make sure it doesn't get any worse than what it's going. That's really where the spend is now. We budgeted for $120,000 because we thought we'd have a bond out for the first year's interest, and obviously we're not there because we're not. The decision hasn't been made to go forward with that, so we do have money budgeted that we can reallocate to if we chose not to go that route anyhow. So we're fine financially with the budget as it is to move forward like this.
You see, that's where I would have to disagree. The city council voted to do this. I don't remember the city council voting to delay anything. We had a schedule of everything that was supposed to be done. Apparently, we're not on schedule now because we haven't been bonded. All of the things that were supposed to be done by now haven't been done.
When we started having the discussion on whether or not, you know, are we moving forward with the bond, that's how we got to this point here. So that's why the delay.
Councilor Haynes.
Thank you, Mayor. From my standpoint of view, I think that's a great idea as far as Councilor Susie and whatever you've recommended. At this point in time, having seen the study and people's comments, I couldn't go forward on that parking garage, either a new one or revitalizing this one. I think that I think the citizenry of this city has made it very clear that it's not something that they would support, and I certainly wouldn't spend any amount of money to do anything with the garage, other than, if we could, you know, if somebody has a use to it, that's fine.
Listen.
Anyone else want to share any ideas on this? I'd like to build some sort of consensus here that, again, we continue to working on parallel paths here and at least putting out, circulating, if you can research, if the city manager might research what expressions of interest look like, and share it with us and consider.
So I'll just, if I could just throw out two things. When the budget was passed last year, again, I was in a different seat, but just thinking back, the parking study was not out, and that did come out later, obviously, we're in this fiscal year, so I don't know if that affected anything. The second piece is I went back and reviewed the expression of interest that you guys approved for the Holy Trinity School when that went out. Very simple document, kind of to go to your point, leaving it very open, and it was very simple, very open, so it allowed people to, or companies to come in and with all different interests, so.
Henry?
So, that's okay. So I guess two things. One, we have a responsibility to make sure that the garage is safe. And clearly, we don't have a consensus position, and I think in terms of major capital projects, generally, we have to have at least 5 of the 6 counselors on the same page, and we don't at this moment, so that's obvious. So I think we just need to make the appropriate investments to make sure it's really safe, in terms of, so if it turns out that doing the parking garage is the right thing to do, I think we just have to recognize that the cost is gonna be even higher than it is today, and this may not be the best time to undertake it just based on construction inflationary rates and interest rates now that the city would have to enter into the parking garage to get some additional expression of interest. And we've used that before to, generate the old police station into something in Lakeport, into, Lakeport situation in terms of the property there, in terms of preserving a business and leading to some expansion. So, I guess that's kind of where we're at, even whether we agree with it or not fully. I think that's where we're at.
Just, what I talked about, one of the costs would be the safety inspection and moving forward, just to go to the point. DPW director just advised me December 6th is the safety inspection, so that's one of the things that would pay for, that we've been paying for and would continue to right now.
That's good. That certainly is a priority because some people certainly are still using it, and with those recommendations,
Absolutely.
probably are something that should be acted on immediately, right?
I guess the other thing, if I could, in terms of the use, or in some creative uses, what's the impact on the existing businesses? That has to be taken into account. They have certain rights, I think, in this situation in terms of, I don't want to see us put something to use that takes away a thriving business that's there. So, I think those are all part of the equation in terms of, I think it's not just an expression of interest of what you'd like to do, but what the whole picture would be. So if we're doing that, how would you work with the existing incumbent businesses? I don't think we could ignore that.
No, I think the excellent points, Councilor Lippman, you're absolutely right. One, safety. Two, what is the overall impact, whether it's renovating it completely or taking it down or doing something that's completely different that we haven't thought of or suggested right now. It will impact, and I think people, you're right. People have made significant investments on that first floor, and they've had some thriving businesses, and we should be cautious what we commit to.
Right. So I guess the expression of interest include how they would deal with that part of it too.
Yep. And no.
I think we have consensus to that extent, so I think I would ask you if you've got enough information to put out a document that encompasses what we've discussed here tonight, and I don't know what type of time frame we might have here once it gets out. Could be up to 60 days.
Do you want the expression of interest document to come back to you first, or just put it out? If
I'd like to see it.
Would you like
Okay.
to see it before it goes out to public?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I'm not sure 60 days to respond to it is sufficient if, someone's got to make some significant capital improvements
Okay.
to look
Right,
at.
well, I can get that back to you first.
assessing feasibility, if we really want to attract creative potentials, then that might be, maybe 90 days would be, I think a minimum.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I think that, that's where we are, that's where we ended up on item 22F on our agenda.
Non-public, right?
I'm gonna make a move to a non-public session right now. We're looking for a motion to go into non-public session under RSA 91A3, Roman 2. Consideration of the acquisition, sale, or lease of real or personal property which, if discussed in public, would likely benefit a party or parties whose interests are adverse to those of the general community. So that was parentheses, small d. Have a motion for that? So made by Counselor Susie, seconded. Counselor Haynes, all those in favor? 6 votes, 5 votes, 6 votes, 5 votes in the affirmative. Motion passes. And would have to clear the chamber, please. What was that?
They were working on it.
Does that not have to be a roll call vote?
Sure.
Does have to be a roll call.
Thank you.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes?
Counselor Susie.
Yes.
Counselor Littman.
Yes.
Counselor Haynes.
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Sure.
5 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Excuse me, gentlemen in the back, we're going into non-public session.
Get out.
See you Wednesday.
Okay. Anything we need to do before we go into?
No, you've already made your vote and.
And
no,
about-
no,
okay,
we're
we're
good.
in it.
We're already in.